she barged into their bedroom at midnight, screaming about a parked car. But what she didn't know was that Sofia held the one card that could end her reign of power. It was a peaceful Friday night in the quiet suburb of Willow Creek. Inside a small but warm two-story house, Daniel and Sofia were curled up together on the living room couch. The glow from their TV flickered across their faces as Netflix filled the room with laughter and drama. Daniel had his arm draped around Sofia's shoulders, and she leaned into him, completely lost in their show. Outside, the streets were silent, the neighborhood asleep. For them the world was perfect, no noise, no interruptions, no worries. But what they didn't know was that trouble was creeping toward their door. Trouble with a name. Trouble known all across the neighborhood. Karen. Karen was infamous in Willow Creek. She was the loudest, strictest, and most unreasonable member of the HOA, the kind of woman who treated minor inconveniences like full-scale disasters. Tonight, she had noticed Daniel's car parked in the driveway past the community quiet hours, and in Karen's mind, that was enough reason to storm over, uninvited, and put an end to what she believed was a scandal. Daniel and Sofia had finally settled into their Saturday night routine. The lights were dimmed, the popcorn bowl balanced. Between them and the TV glowed with the bright colors of the latest comedy show. The couple laughed freely, their voices echoing warmly in the cozy living room. Every punchline from the actors on screen sent Sofia clutching Daniel's arm, tears of laughter threatening to spill down her cheeks. Daniel grinned back, his head thrown against the couch, completely at ease. For them, this was peace, a little slice of happiness carved out from a busy week, but that peace was about to shatter. The front door creaked open, a sharp groan of hinges that might have drawn any other homeowner's attention, yet the surround sound masked it, drowning the noise. In canned laughter and the applause of the TV audience, Daniel and Sofia didn't notice the chill that followed the draft, or the shadow that stretched long across the living room floor. In the doorway stood Karen. Her arms were folded tightly against her chest, a posture of superiority as if she owned not only the house, but the very air inside it. Karen's sharp bob framed her scowling face, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. She scanned the room with narrowed eyes. Every detail disgusted her, from the blanket strewn across the armrest to the soda cans on the coffee table. It wasn't just messy in her eyes, it was disrespectful. Karen's nose wrinkled as though she had stepped into enemy territory. This wasn't a neighbor's living room, it was a battleground, and she had every intention of reminding Daniel and Sofia who really held authority here. She didn't wait. Her voice cut through the room like a siren. "Excuse me, hello, this is a violation of HOA Code Section 7, she barked, her tone so shrill it could have shattered glass. "Cars are not to be left in the driveway at this time." Her words bounced hard against the walls, echoing down the hallway. But Daniel and Sofia remained glued to the screen, their laughter bubbling over the noise like a shield of blissful ignorance. Daniel wiped a tear from his eye, chuckling, while Sofia leaned forward to grab more popcorn. Not even a flicker of recognition suggested they'd heard Karen's tirade. Karen's jaw tightened. The vein in her forehead pulsed as her face flushed crimson. To her, this wasn't just ignorance, it was rebellion. These two weren't following the rules, and worse, they weren't acknowledging her authority. The thought made her blood boil. She stomped forward, the sharp click of her heels slicing through the muffled TV sounds. Each step was deliberate, fueled with anger, as though she were marching into enemy ranks. She stopped just a few feet from the couch, glaring down at the oblivious couple like a judge about to deliver a guilty verdict. "Are you ignoring me?" she snapped, her voice cracking into a higher pitch, dripping with outrage. "This is not acceptable. You cannot disregard the HOA. Do you hear me?" Still nothing. Daniel slapped his knee and doubled over laughing at the show, while Sofia's giggles spilled into the room like music. Neither turned to acknowledge Karen. The comedy track's canned applause seemed to mock her, drowning her out as though she were irrelevant. And for Karen, irrelevance was the ultimate insult. Her nails dug into her arms where they were crossed, her body trembling with indignation. Being ignored was not something she tolerated. Every fiber of her being demanded control, demanded attention, demanded obedience. The HOA was her kingdom, and these two dared to act as though her voice carried no weight inside it. Her patience cracked. Karen's lips twisted into a grimace as she muttered under her breath words half-formed, brimming with venom. She glared at Sofia, then Daniel, her eyes burning holes through them. Finally, she spun on her heel, her blazer swishing as she stormed down the hallway. She wasn't going to be ignored. Every footstep echoed louder than the last, the sound of her heels ricocheting off the tile, a declaration of war. If they wouldn't answer her in the living room, she would corner them where they couldn't escape. The laughter on the TV only made her angrier, as though the show itself mocked her attempts at authority. Karen's mind raced. These two thought they could laugh her away, thought they could treat her like background noise. But she was the HOA, she was the law of this neighborhood. If they wouldn't respect her voice, she would make them respect her presence. Storming deeper into the house, Karen's silhouette disappeared into the hallway's shadows, her mutters growing darker, her rage simmering like a storm ready to break. Daniel and Sofia had no idea their evening comedy would turn into a confrontation far more dramatic than anything on their screen. For Karen, this wasn't just about a car in a driveway anymore, it was about power. And tonight, she was determined to make sure they remembered exactly who wielded it. The bedroom door flew open with a violent bang, the handle smacking against the wall so hard that the hollow sound echoed through the quiet house. Daniel and Sofia both jolted upright, their laughter from the living room still clinging faintly in their throats, now replaced by pure shock. Sofia instinctively pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her body stiff with fear. Daniel's first instinct was to shield her, stepping half in front of her, as though expecting an intruder, but nothing could have prepared them. For who was standing there? Karen. Daniel's voice cracked with disbelief and anger, as his eyes locked onto the figure in the doorway. The woman stood there, shoulders squared, lips pursed into a thin line, one finger already raised as though she were about to deliver a courtroom verdict. His heart pounded in his chest, fury quickly overtaking shock. "What are you doing in our house?" Karen didn't flinch. She didn't back away, didn't look ashamed, didn't even acknowledge that she had just committed a serious crime. Instead, her eyes blazed with indignation, and she thrust her finger toward them like a weapon. "Your car is in the driveway," she shouted, her voice slicing through the tension in the room. "It's in violation of HOA rules, section 7.4, to be exact. Do you have any idea how much disturbance you're causing at this hour? People have complained." The two words rattled against the walls, her volume so loud it seemed to shake the quiet of midnight. Sofia blinked in disbelief, her expression twisting between confusion and outrage. "Complained," she repeated, her voice incredulous. She took a small step forward, her blanket still clutched around her shoulders like a shield. "Karen, it's midnight. Everyone's asleep. No one has complained except you." Karen ignored her entirely. Her face was red, her eyes wild, as though Sofia's words hadn't even registered. She kept her finger pointed accusingly at them, her other hand planted firmly on her hip. She looked less like a neighbor and more like a dictator giving orders. "This is against the rules." Karen's voice rose again, each word hammered out like a gavel strike. "You think you can just break HOA codes whenever you want? Leave your car wherever you like. Ignore the very foundation of this neighborhood. Not on my watch." Her shrill tones scraped against the walls, making Sofia wince. Daniel, however, was done. His fists clenched at his sides, his whole body trembling with the effort of keeping himself in check. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Couldn't believe that this woman, this so-called HOA enforcer, had the audacity to not only barge into their house, but to lecture them over a car parked in their own driveway. "Karen," he growled, his voice low but shaking with rage. He took a step closer, his face flushing red. "You broke into our house at midnight over a parked car. Do you even hear yourself right now?" For a moment, the entire room fell silent. The television in the living room, still faintly audible, seemed to mock the tension with canned laughter from the comedy show they had abandoned. The only other sound was Karen's heavy breathing, each inhale sharp, each exhale louder than it should have been, her chest rising and falling with self-righteous fury. Her face was twisted, lips curled into something between a sneer and a scowl, her eyes wide with the certainty of someone who truly believed she was in the right. It didn't matter to her that she had crossed every line, ignored every boundary. In her mind, she was the hero, the enforcer of order in a neighborhood slipping into chaos. Sofia's eyes narrowed as her fear melted into anger. She pulled the blanket tighter, but her voice no longer wavered. "Karen, you broke into our home. Do you realize how insane that is? No one cares about your rules at midnight. You're trespassing." But Karen only shook her head furiously, her hair swinging with the motion. "No," she barked, her tone venomous. "What's insane is neighbors who think the rules don't apply to them. If I let you leave your car in the driveway tonight, then tomorrow someone else will think they can do it. Then what? Chaos, disorder. The entire neighborhood goes downhill." Daniel's jaw tightened, his teeth grinding as he took another step forward. He was so close to her now, he could see the sweat glistening on her brow under the dim bedroom light. "You're worried about chaos?" he said, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. "You're the one breaking into people's homes in the middle of the night. You're the chaos, Karen." The words hung heavy in the air. Karen's eyes flickered for just a moment, as though she had actually heard what he said. But instead of backing down, she squared her shoulders, puffed out her chest, and doubled down, her voice rising to a shriek. "You don't get to tell me what chaos is. I am protecting this neighborhood from people like you. If you respected the HOA, none of this would be happening." Daniel and Sofia stood their ground, the fury in their faces now outweighing their initial shock. What had once been laughter and warmth in their evening had turned into a midnight standoff. And for the first time, both of them realized that Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was unhinged. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the TV still playing in the background. Karen's heavy breaths filled the room, her finger still raised, trembling now not from doubt, but from the sheer intensity of her conviction. Daniel finally broke the silence, his voice steady but laced with warning. "Karen, this ends now. You've crossed the line. Get out." Before Daniel could say more, Sofia took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed calm steady in a way that Daniel hadn't seen before. For a moment, it was as if the chaos in the room shrank, all of it funneled into her. Without breaking eye contact with Karen, she reached over to the nightstand. Her fingers brushed past the lamp, the glass of water, and finally closed around her purse. The room was silent except for the soft zip as she pulled it open. Karen smirked, misinterpreting the move as hesitation. "Oh, what now? Going to call the police on me? Don't waste your time. I am the HOA here. I speak for this neighborhood. You're in violation, and you need to accept it." Her words came out loud, but the edge of confidence was already beginning to crack. Sofia didn't reply. Instead, she pulled out a slim leather wallet and flicked it open with practiced ease. The lamplight glinted off a plastic card tucked inside a card that bore the HOA board's official emblem. Bold letters declared, "Sofia Martinez active. Board member." The effect was instantaneous. Karen's face faltered, her jaw going slack as if someone had pulled the rug out from under her. For the first time since she barged in, her words caught in her throat. You're a member of the HOA board," she stuttered, her voice suddenly small. Sofia held the card out, her hands steady, her gaze sharper than glass. "That's right. Not just a resident, not just your neighbor. I've been serving on the board for 2 years, and you know what that means, Karen?" Her tone hardened, each word like a hammer striking steel. "It means I know the rules better than anyone else in this neighborhood, including you." Karen blinked rapidly, searching for footing, her earlier bravado draining away. She opened her mouth, but Sofia didn't give her the chance. "You just broke into our home," Sofia continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You invaded our privacy. You harassed us, in the middle of the night, over a car in a driveway. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you've just created for yourself? This isn't an HOA violation, it's a criminal offense." Daniel, who had been standing stiff and furious beside the bed, let out a sharp laugh. He folded his arms, his chest heaving from the adrenaline. "Looks like you're the one breaking the rules tonight, Karen, not us. You." His mocking smile widened. Salt poured into Karen's unraveling confidence. Karen's face went pale. Her shoulders slumped, as though the air had been sucked right out of her lungs. The shrillness that had carried her for so long, that piercing voice she used like a weapon, evaporated into silence. She stepped back once, her heels clicking faintly. On the hardwood floor, her eyes darted between the card in Sofia's hand and the accusing glare on Daniel's face. For the first time in years, he looked unsure, vulnerable. This doesn't change the fact that she tried, but the words came out. Weak, broken. "Oh, it changes everything," Sofia snapped back, her voice stronger now. She moved a step closer, forcing Karen to take another backward shuffle. "You've used the HOA as your personal weapon for too long. Bullying neighbors, harassing families, acting like you're judge, jury, and executioner in this community. Well, guess what? Not anymore. You've crossed the line tonight, and you're going to answer for it." Karen's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. She had no clipboard defense, no prepared speech, no audience of neighbors to back her up. It was just her canard, exposed. And shrinking by the second, Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "So what's the code violation for breaking into someone's bedroom, Karen?" Section 7.4, subsection lunacy. Sofia shot him a glance, but even she couldn't suppress the ghost of a smile tugging at her lips. The tension in the room had shifted. The power no longer belonged to Karen, it belonged to them. Karen's hands trembled as she clutched her clipboard, tighter, as if it could somehow shield her from the weight of her own actions. She shook her head quickly, muttering under her breath, This isn't how it's supposed to go." "No," Sofia said firmly, her tone final. "This is exactly how it's supposed to go when someone like you abuses their power." Silence filled the room once more. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but heavy. Every breath, every small shift of weight felt amplified. Karen stood frozen at the edge of the room, her certainty shattered. While Daniel and Sofia held their ground. Finally, Karen broke. She turned on her heel, fumbling for words she couldn't find, and staggered toward the door. This isn't over," she muttered. But even she didn't sound convinced. Sofia didn't move, didn't lower her card until the woman disappeared into the hallway. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He looked at Sofia, with a mixture of pride and awe. "I've never seen you like that before," he admitted softly. Sofia finally closed her wallet, her hands trembling just slightly now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "She thought she could control everyone," she whispered. "But tonight, she finally learned she can't control us." Daniel wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "Not anymore," he agreed. And in the quiet that followed, the house felt theirs again. Safe, strong. The kind of home no HOA bully could ever take away. The silence stretched. The once dominant Karen now looked small, diminished, cornered by the very rules she had once weaponized. Her face flushed with humiliation as she took one shaky step back, then another. "This isn't over," she muttered weakly. But even her voice betrayed the truth. She didn't believe it. She turned and hurried out of the bedroom, her footsteps clumsy against the hallway floor. A door slammed moments later, the sound of her retreat echoing like defeat. Daniel let out a long exhale. running a hand through his hair. "Well," he said, shaking his head with a half-smile, "that was one way to deal with her." Sofia closed her wallet and finally let her shoulders relax. Her hands trembled slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. Daniel slipped an arm around her, pulling her close. "She thought she could control us," Sofia whispered, her voice steady with newfound confidence. "But she learned tonight that she can't." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Not anymore." And with that, the house fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of fear or intimidation. It was the silence of victory. A silence that said their home was truly theirs, and no HOA bully could ever take that away. And that's the danger of HOA power trips when you invade someone's life. It just might backfire in ways you never imagined.